Hello, my name is Christopher Waddell. I'm Director of the School of Journalism and Communication at Carleton University, and I'm joined today by the winner of last year's Michener-Deacon Fellowship for Journalism Education, Julie Ireton from the CBC, and the winner of this coming year's Michener-Deacon Fellowship for Investigative Journalism, Rita, Celli, also from the CBC. So Julie, tell us a little bit about your project and what you actually did during the 4 months you were actually doing research and producing a report.
Well, it was very fun because I got to stretch academic muscles that I hadn't stretched in a very long time since I was at journalism school myself. And I wasn't reporting, which was kind of nice. So having 4 months to sort of delve into a topic, a more academic topic, looking at entrepreneurial, what I ended up calling startup journalism. And a lot of people needed that sort of explained off the top, what exactly that meant. And basically, it's the idea of journalists becoming their own boss, hanging up the shingle and starting something. And it can be anything from freelancing to some of the huge multi-million-dollar organizations we see starting up now out of more traditional media. So part of what I want to do is look at business models and look at how the business model is changing, and also look at what journalism schools can do in order to teach students how they might embark on something on their own. If they can't find their own job, is it within the realm of imagination that they can go out and find their own work on a freelance level, or start something in the digital, especially in the digital medium. That's where I started, and I found that actually the Michener-Deacon Fellowship opened doors for me all over North America. To say that I was a fellow and working on this kind of research, it opened doors at Harvard, Neiman, and MIT, their journalism lab, and Northeastern, Boston University, NYU, City University of New York. All those universities and outlets now are looking at startup journalism quite in depth. Some are teaching entrepreneurial journalism and business models and how a student might go forth and start some sort of niche, some sort of a journalism startup. So it was really interesting to see what they're doing out there and what we might be able to bring back and teach here in Canada.
Now, part of that, you're in a journalism school for 4 months. You've got an office. It was at Carleton,
yes,
which was great for us. You've got an office, and how do you bring the students into that, or do you manage to bring students into that process?
Yeah, well, that was important for me to get a sense of what students wanted and what they needed if I was going to develop a course to propose for here at Carleton University. So I made, through various web portals, I guess, I sent out notes to people through professors and to let people know this is what I was doing. I put a sign on my door. I left my door open so people would come to the office and talk to me, and a lot of students did. And I actually got the idea of having a little journalism startup cafe, and thought, well, you know, if we get 5, 6, 7 students, and we'll start a conversation about what students might want. And I was really targeting students in the 4th year and master's level. And so I put up a poster. The Journalism Society at Carleton, which is made up of students, they helped advertise. Next thing I knew, we had, I think it was 30 people come out. So it was a good showing, and we got lots of ideas about what they wanted to learn. It was important for me to know the kinds of things that they would want out of a course. So it was beyond the business models. They wanted to know about coding and some of the nitty-gritty of the digital medium and how they could produce stuff on their own on there.
And do they see this as something they might go to once they graduate, or is this something they're putting in their back pocket in case they go out and look for what we might call a traditional job, but these days traditional jobs seem to be shrinking? You know,
there was a real mix. There was a real mix. So some students wanted to have different skills, whether it was freelancing or a bit of that business background to start up something on their own. Some people had really great ideas on topics they could start up on their own. And then others wanted to be entrepreneurs. So have skills that they could take to a mainstream operation and pitch and propose to them, which would be very attractive to a mainstream media group that, you know, really needs some fresh ideas.
So you've gone through the 4 months, you've done all this, you've talked to students, you've talked to people outside, you've talked to people inside Carleton. What happens at the end of 4 months? What did you do with all this?
I put it all into a report. I did a lot of traveling, which I didn't mention. So I traveled to all those universities that I mentioned off the top in New York and Boston. I went to a conference in Atlanta. I went to King's College in Halifax, where they are offering a new ventures program. So I did a lot of reading and studying, and just really decided what would work here in Ottawa for the students at Carleton University. I put together a report of my travels, but I also put together a proposal for Carleton of a course, an entrepreneurial media innovation course that I'm hoping that they're going to consider for the future.
Great. Now, Rita, you're not doing journalism education. You've been given a fellowship to go off and do investigative journalism. So your project is?
Okay, I thought about this particular proposal over a couple of nights. So there are questions that, you know, are niggling away at me in my daily work. So I host this, you know, journalistic news, current affairs phone-in on CBC, and it has to do with mining. Who really gets rich when it comes to the profits on in Ontario's multi-billion-dollar mineral production? I mean, it's the highest production in value in the country. But when you start looking at numbers, you know, what it actually forms in terms of GDP for the province, real jobs created in the industry, it starts looking a bit smaller. And if you contrast this, so for me, when I talk to political leaders and ask them questions, in particular now in the context of the Ring of Fire, so this is an undeveloped...
Which is the planned development up in Northern Ontario for chromium and other...
Chromite and other things. So chromite, which is this new kind of discovery in Ontario. I mean, they lavish praise and promise. They call it the oil sands of Ontario. And I really, all three parties, in fact, you know, all three leaders gave me the same answer.
In the provincial election just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and you know, it's actually bizarre when you know, parties from every you know, end of the spectrum are saying the same things, and they didn't always ring true, if I can say, when I asked about, well, how will, if you spend $1 billion or $2 billion of public money will go into the infrastructure, let's say for a road or a railway to carry this stuff out, how will Ontario ever get this return? And you know, you get these sort of kind of obfuscated answers. It may be deliberate, it may be naive, that they don't really understand things like the tax structure. So questions that I have that I've never been able to find someone to answer, and now it's going to be me apparently, is, you know, trying to assess sort of the value of the production, let's say, versus taxes paid. It gets really murky when you start looking at tax holidays and tax credits, and so who's getting rich? Is it the companies? Is it, I mean, the TSX is the largest concentration of mining capital in the world. Obviously, Bay Street does well.
Another component, though, has to be how much money is actually going into the north, because the north is has been a big problem for Ontario all the time. Northern Ontario always complains nobody pays attention to them, and the projects that tend to happen in the north tend to be kind of boom or bust projects. I mean, Northern Ontario's had a great history of mining, over gold mining back in the 20s and 30s. Other forms more recently, Inco.
Well, and think of all the high stakes things that have happened. So all the takeovers of the big steel Canadian companies, the you know, nickel companies like Falconbridge and Xstrata, all now kind of, you know, foreign-owned companies. And the other thing in Ontario that's interesting, there is another very significant modern discovery that I think is worth exploring, and that's the diamond mine in north of Attawapiskat. It's it's a modern discovery. Diamonds have never been discovered, let alone taken out of the ground in this province. So it's, you know, in the last decade, assess how is that really working. I mean, you contrast again what the companies perhaps have made versus what has been returned into general revenue.
But part of the issue also comes down to, what do you do with whatever you're taking out of the ground? Do you deal with it and refine it on site? Do you ship it somewhere else? Is it refined in Canada? Is it refined it? And that's some of the debate we see with oil for sure. Yes. And we also have seen with other minerals at various points in time too.
Saskatchewan, you know, now shipping uranium for the first time, like container ships overseas. So a lot of big questions. I have to say, I'm really thrilled at the opportunity. I'm quite, I think, to be honest, nervous, because it's not my domain. I mean, it's almost like, you know, I need to become an instant auditor, but I will have the time to consider maybe how to approach it and do some of this analysis. I'm really excited and nervous about the data journalism part of it. It's new for me. I've grown up at the CBC. I've been here 23 years, and I host a daily show, which is a whole other set of skills. But this idea of crunching numbers and really, you know, digging into reports, it's a real opportunity at this point in my career. 3
quick last questions. How do you think you're going to do it? Which maybe take up more than a quick time.
Ask all 3 and I'll pick one.
Okay. When do you think you're going to have it done? And how do you see presenting the results to the public? What format are you going to use and how are you going to do it?
So how do I get it done? I've already started. I was so excited when I got the call. I mean, right away I emailed some context. So I've been having coffee on the side.
Right.
Good advice from scholar past is to be the scholar for a while and not put on blinders. Like listen for a bit before you nail down.
Do research and reading and everything else.
Yeah,
Talk to people.
and, yeah. So to keep somewhat of an open mind in that sense. But there are some stories that things like the crunching of some numbers. That has to come out of it. And the time frame within the year, I would like to have something accomplished. And in theory, right now, the idea would be that I could produce things for all 3 platforms at the CBC.
That would be video, audio, and something for online. And
But
presumably it's a topic that lends itself to lots of data visualization and graphs and charts and moving graphics and things like that. All the things that entrepreneurial journalists want to put in their
Come
publications.
back to Julie, circle back. So it's thrilling. It's really an opportunity of a lifetime.
And it's a great opportunity to do it too. There's a new government just in power in Ontario, and they're going to have to consider a lot of the issues surrounding the Ring of Fire, and deciding what they're going to do with the federal government.
I know that the Auditor General of Ontario has been asked to do this, and it's never happened. So
right. Great.
We'll see what happens.
Okay, okay. Thank you both. That's a wonderful description of both what can be accomplished with the Journalism Fellowship for Education, and also what can be accomplished in the Journalism Fellowship for Investigative Reporting. And it's an opportunity to see what other people can do if they apply for it in future years as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.